My name is Erica Reynolds, and at 34 years old, I never expected to be the person who brought a multi-million-dollar deal to its knees. For 7 years, I built specialized insurance protocols at Meridian Tech, making our company acquisition ready. That Tuesday, when my boss Bradley called me to HR and smirked, saying my position was redundant, I felt my world collapse. What none of them realized was that my name was still the only one listed in the key person insurance covenant their $450 million acquisition depended on. Before I share how I accidentally became the linchpin in this corporate disaster, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories of corporate karma. I always had a knack for spotting potential problems before they happened. That talent led me to risk assessment and eventually to Meridian Tech. With my MBA from Cornell University and 3 years of insurance compliance experience at a major firm, I was thrilled when Meridian recruited me. They were a mid-sized but rapidly growing company, specializing in enterprise security solutions, the kind of software that protected other companies from data breaches and cyber attacks. Meridian started in a garage like many tech companies, but under CEO Maxwell Richards, it had transformed into a serious player with just over 200 employees and offices in 3 cities. Max, as he preferred to be called by the executive team, had vision. He took what was essentially a small cybersecurity consulting firm and pivoted it into a scalable software solution that major corporations were eager to buy. When I joined Meridian, my role was clear. As the risk assessment specialist, I was responsible for creating comprehensive insurance protocols, ensuring compliance with industry regulations, and most importantly, building frameworks that would make us attractive to investors or potential buyers. Max never hid the fact that his ultimate goal was to position the company for acquisition. For the first 5 years, I reported directly to our Chief Financial Officer, Laura Bennett. She understood the value of my work, especially the complex key person insurance structures I developed. These policies protected the company in case we lost essential employees who held critical knowledge or relationships. In many ways, these protocols were my specialty, and I took pride in how I tailored them specifically for our industry and company size. Everything changed about 2 years ago when Laura left for a position at a larger company. Rather than hire a new CFO immediately, Max restructured the department and brought in Bradley Thompson to oversee several financial teams, including mine. Bradley came from our sales operations division, with a background in revenue forecasting, not risk management or insurance. From our first meeting, I could tell he viewed my department as an expensive cost center rather than a crucial compliance function. "So you handle all the insurance paperwork?" he asked during our first one-on-one, reducing my entire role to administrative work. "Actually, I develop our risk mitigation frameworks, including our key person insurance structures that protect the company in case we lose essential employees," I explained. "These protocols are especially important if the company is positioning for investment or acquisition." Bradley nodded absently, clearly uninterested. "Well, let us know if you need anything to keep those papers filed properly." Despite this dismissive attitude, I had strong allies in the company. Jennifer Parker from legal consulted with me regularly on compliance issues. Damon Washington in human resources valued my input on employment policies. Rachel Chen from our client success team appreciated how my risk assessments helped her explain our security measures to major clients. The first real warning sign came during a quarterly planning meeting about 9 months after Bradley took over. I presented my proposal for updating our key person insurance protocols to account for our new product division. "I think we can streamline this," Bradley interrupted, barely letting me finish. "All this specialized insurance seems excessive. Standard coverage should be fine." "Standard coverage would leave significant gaps," I responded, maintaining my composure, "especially for the product team leaders who hold proprietary knowledge." "Let us focus on growth metrics right now," Bradley said, effectively ending the discussion. "We can circle back to insurance details later." As we left the meeting, Jennifer whispered, He has no idea what you actually do, does he? I shook my head. Not a clue. Looking back, I should have recognized those early interactions with Bradley for what they were. He saw me as a threat, someone whose expertise he could not easily understand or control. As rumors of potential acquisitions grew stronger, his behavior toward me only worsened. He was systematically positioning himself to take credit for my work, while making my role appear less valuable than it truly was. What I did not realize then was that Bradley was laying the groundwork for what would eventually happen to me, all while the company was moving steadily toward the biggest deal in its history. The first concrete rumors about an acquisition started 6 months before everything fell apart. I was getting coffee in the break room when I overheard two senior developers talking in hushed tones. "Quantum Industries sent another team to meet with Max yesterday," one said. "Third visit this month." "Acquisition seems almost certain," the other replied. "Word is they are offering close to $500 million. Quantum Industries was a tech giant, one of the top enterprise software companies in the world, with market capitalization over $50 billion. They had been on an acquisition spree, absorbing smaller companies with innovative technologies to expand their product ecosystem. If they were interested in Meridian, this was exactly the scenario my work had been preparing for all these years. The following Monday, an all-hands meeting confirmed what the rumor mill had already spread. Max stood on the small stage in our largest conference room, practically vibrating with excitement. "I wanted you all to hear this directly from me," he announced. "We have entered preliminary discussions with Quantum Industries about a potential acquisition. Nothing is finalized, and I ask for your discretion with this information, but I believe this could be an incredible opportunity for Meridian and for each of you personally." The office was buzzing afterward. Some people worried about job security, others calculated potential stock option values, and a few started updating their resumes just in case. I had a different concern: ensuring all our risk assessment and insurance documentation was acquisition ready. The email from our legal department arrived the next day, marked urgent. They needed updated key person insurance documentation, specifically structured for acquisition review. This was exactly what I had been preparing for years, and I threw myself into the task with renewed energy. I worked late every night for 2 weeks, meticulously reviewing and updating every protocol. What made key person insurance so critical during acquisitions was that it identified which employees were considered essential to the company value. If these individuals left, it could fundamentally change what the acquiring company was buying. For a tech company like ours, these were usually the founders, lead developers, and those with specialized knowledge of our proprietary systems. As the risk specialist, I worked with department heads to identify these key people and structure appropriate insurance protocols. When I finished the updated documentation, I sent it directly to our legal team and copied Bradley as my supervisor. 2 days later, I discovered he had forwarded my work to the executive team, with a cover note implying he had overseen its creation. He did not even mention my name. "Great key person documentation from our finance team," his email read. "I have ensured it meets all requirements for the quantum review." Jennifer forwarded me the email thread with a single question mark as her comment. I was furious but unsure how to respond. This was becoming a pattern, with Bradley taking credit for my work while simultaneously diminishing my role to others. During the 3rd month of acquisition talks, I was scheduled to join a meeting with Quantum representatives to explain our risk mitigation frameworks. The night before, Bradley sent me a terse email. "I will handle the risk assessment overview tomorrow. You can focus on your regular duties." When I asked for clarification, he replied that the meeting had been streamlined for efficiency, and my presence was no longer required. I later learned he had presented my slides nearly verbatim, stumbling when Quantum executives asked detailed questions he could not answer. Around this time, I began hearing the term streamlining with increasing frequency. The executive team talked about streamlining operations and removing redundancies in preparation for the acquisition. These are often code words for layoffs, and the anxiety around the office was palpable. Jennifer and I started having lunch together, almost daily sharing what information we could about the acquisition progress. Legal is swamped with due diligence requests, she told me over salads one day. Quantum is being incredibly thorough. They are particularly interested in our key person insurance structures. That makes sense, I replied. In acquisitions this size, they need to know which employees are critical to maintain company value. Your name keeps coming up in the documentation, Jennifer added. You are listed as the author on most of our insurance protocols. I should have found this reassuring, but something about Bradley continued to worry me. He had been excluding me from important meetings and isolating me from the executive team. Twice I attempted to discuss my concerns with him, and both times he dismissed them as paranoia in a time of change. The situation reached a breaking point during a departmental planning session. I presented a crucial update to our acquisition risk assessment, highlighting potential regulatory issues that needed addressing before the deal could close. Bradley cut me off mid-presentation. I think we are overcomplicating this. These concerns are purely theoretical. They are not theoretical, I countered, frustration finally showing in my voice. They are specific regulatory requirements for transactions over $300 million. The room grew uncomfortable as Bradley and I stared at each other. Finally, he smiled tightly and said, "Let us table this for now, and move on to the next agenda item." After the meeting, he pulled me aside in the hallway. "You need to be a team player, Erica. Raising unnecessary concerns only creates anxiety during a sensitive time." "These are not unnecessary concerns," I insisted. "They are legal requirements that could delay or derail the acquisition if not properly addressed. I will decide what is necessary for this department to focus on." He snapped his facade of collegiality, dropping completely. "Remember who you report to." That night I confided in Jennifer over drinks. "I think Bradley is deliberately sidelining me. I just do not understand why." Jennifer sipped her wine thoughtfully. "People get strange during acquisitions. They start positioning themselves, protecting their territory. Bradley probably sees you as competition, since you understand aspects of the business he does not." "But we are not even in competition for the same role," I protested. "In his mind you might be," she replied, "especially if he is trying to secure his position post-acquisition." I did not know it then, but events were already in motion that would prove Jennifer right in ways neither of us could have anticipated. The storm that had been brewing was about to break, and I would be caught directly in its path. The meeting request from Human Resources arrived in my inbox at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. The subject line was vague: discussion regarding department restructuring. I assumed it was another general update about the acquisition progress, perhaps with details about how our department would function under quantum leadership. I closed the financial risk report I had been working on and headed to the small conference room next to the HR department. When I opened the door and saw Bradley sitting beside Melissa from HR, both with unnaturally neutral expressions, a cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Please have a seat." Erica Melissa gestured to the chair across from them. On the table was a thin folder with my name on it. "What is this about?" I asked, remaining standing. "Please sit down," Bradley said with feigned concern. "This is a difficult conversation, and we should all be comfortable." I sat reluctantly, keeping my back straight and my expression composed, despite the anxiety building inside me. Melissa spoke first, her voice adopting that particular HR tone that attempts to sound compassionate while delivering bad news. "Erica, as you know, Meridian has been preparing for significant changes with the upcoming acquisition. Part of that process involves evaluating our departmental structures for redundancies and opportunities for streamlining." The word redundancies hung in the air between us. I knew what was coming but could not believe it was actually happening. After careful consideration, Melissa continued, sliding a document toward me. "We have determined that your position as risk assessment specialist will be eliminated effective today." "Eliminated," I repeated the word, feeling foreign in my mouth. "On what grounds?" This is when Bradley leaned forward, a small smirk playing at the corner of his mouth before he controlled it. "Your job is redundant, Erica. The functions you perform can be easily absorbed by the general finance team." Anyone can handle insurance paperwork and basic compliance tracking. The dismissive way he described my specialized role, reducing 7 years of complex work to insurance paperwork, made my cheeks burn with anger and humiliation. That is a fundamental mischaracterization of my position, I stated, fighting to keep my voice even. My role involves specialized risk assessment protocols that I personally developed for this company, particularly the key person insurance structures that are critical for the acquisition process. Bradley waved his hand dismissively. Those protocols are already in place. Maintaining them is a clerical function at this point. I turned to Melissa. This termination is happening in the middle of due diligence for a major acquisition. The timing makes no sense from a business perspective. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but pushed another document forward. We have prepared a severance package reflecting your years of service. 2 months' salary and benefits continuation through the end of the quarter. My mind was spinning. I need time to review these documents with legal counsel. Of course, Melissa nodded. However, today will still be your last day. After this meeting, you will have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings. For security purposes, Bradley will accompany you to your desk. The humiliation of being escorted like a potential thief after 7 years of loyal service was almost too much to bear. I stood up, leaving the documents untouched on the table. I believe this decision is a mistake that will have significant consequences for the acquisition process. Bradley stood as well, no longer bothering to hide his smirk. I think we can manage without your paperwork skills, Erica. The company will be just fine. As we walked to my desk, colleagues watched with that particular expression people have when they witness someone being marched out, but are trying to pretend they are not looking. Some quickly averted their eyes. Others offered sympathetic glances. Jennifer saw what was happening from across the office and immediately headed in my direction. "What is going on?" she asked, placing herself between Bradley and me. "Departmental restructuring," Bradley replied coolly. "Erica will be leaving us today." Jennifer looked at me in shock. "This is ridiculous. Erica is essential to our compliance framework." "These decisions have been finalized at the executive level," Bradley stated, though I knew this was likely his decision alone, merely approved by distracted executives focused on the acquisition. "Give us a minute," Jennifer said to Bradley, not really asking. Bradley checked his watch pointedly. 5 minutes. Then security will need her badge and laptop. When he stepped away, Jennifer whispered urgently, "This is wrong on so many levels. Do not sign anything today. Take the papers home and call me tonight." I nodded numbly, still processing what was happening. "I will keep you updated," she promised, squeezing my arm. "This is not over." As I packed my personal items into a cardboard box, I noticed a document on my desk that I had been reviewing earlier that week. It was one of the key person insurance covenants I had updated for the acquisition with my name clearly listed as the policy architect, and more importantly, as one of the key personnel whose continued employment was material to company valuation. In my shock, I slid the document into my personal portfolio without really thinking about its significance. The walk out of the building carrying my box, past colleagues I had worked with for years, was the longest of my life. Bradley followed a few steps behind, making sure I left the premises, as if I might steal office supplies on my way out. The final indignity was at the security desk, where I had to surrender my badge under his watchful eye. "Best of luck with your future endeavors," he said with false sincerity as the doors closed between us. I made it to my car before the tears came. Not delicate, dignified tears, but ugly, gasping sobs that fogged my glasses and made my nose run. 7 years of work of building something I was proud of ended with a Friday afternoon ambush and a cardboard box. The weekend passed in a blur of shock, anger, and disbelief. I fluctuated between rage and despair, replaying every interaction with Bradley, searching for what I could have done differently. By Sunday, practical concerns began to surface. I had some savings enough to last about 4 months if I was careful. My mortgage payment was substantial, and health insurance would become expensive once my benefits ended. I updated my resume and LinkedIn profile, notifying my professional network that I was looking for new opportunities. But beyond the practical concerns was a deeper pain, the loss of professional identity and purpose. For 7 years, I had been Erica Reynolds, risk assessment specialist at Meridian Tech. Now, who was I? What I did not realize yet was that the document I had inadvertently taken home with me would soon answer that question in unexpected ways. 3 weeks after my termination, I had settled into an uncomfortable routine. My days were filled with job applications, networking coffees that led nowhere, and increasingly desperate scrolling through employment websites. The risk assessment specialist positions were few and far between, and those that existed wanted industry experience different from what I had. I had just returned from an interview for a position that paid 30% less than my previous salary when my phone rang. Jennifer was calling, which had become a regular occurrence since my firing. She had been my lifeline to sanity, checking in every few days with updates from Meridian and much-needed moral support. "Are you home?" she asked without preamble. "I need to talk to you about something important." "Just walked in the door," I replied. "Is everything okay? You sound stressed." "Not on the phone," she said. "Can I come over after work?" "Around 7. Jennifer arrived at my apartment that evening with a bottle of wine and a worried expression. She barely waited until we were seated on my couch before launching into her news. "The acquisition is moving forward rapidly," she said, pouring us each a generous glass of Cabernet. "Final due diligence is nearly complete, and they are talking about closing within 3 weeks." I took a sip of wine, trying not to show how much this information stung. The acquisition that I had helped prepare the company for over 7 years was happening without me. "That is not all," Jennifer continued, leaning forward. "Bradley has been presenting all your risk assessment protocols as his work. He is taking full credit for the insurance frameworks in the due diligence meetings." "Of course he is," I said bitterly. "That is why he needed me gone." "But here is where it gets interesting," Jennifer said, pulling a folder from her bag. "I was reviewing the final insurance covenant documents today, and I found something significant." She opened the folder and pointed to a highlighted section of the document. "You are still listed as the sole key person in the insurance covenant for risk assessment protocols. Your name was never removed." I stared at the document, my brain struggling to process this information. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Jennifer said slowly, "that according to these legally binding documents, you are considered essential personnel for the acquisition. The key person clause specifically states that if designated individuals leave the company prior to closing, it constitutes a material change that must be disclosed and potentially renegotiated." "But I did leave the company. They fired me." "Exactly." Jennifer took a long sip of her wine. "And they never updated the documentation or notified Quantum about this material change." I remembered the document I had taken home on my last day and went to retrieve it from my home office. When I returned, I spread it on the coffee table beside Jennifer's document. "Look," I pointed to the language. "The key person insurance clause specifically states that termination of listed individuals represents a material change in company valuation and requires immediate notification to all parties involved in acquisition proceedings." Jennifer nodded. "And no such notification has been made. Bradley has been proceeding as if everything is fine, probably assuming no one would notice this detail." "But would this really affect the acquisition?" I asked, still not fully grasping the implications. "Erica, you designed these protocols yourself. You know how serious breach of insurance covenants can be during acquisitions. This is not just a procedural oversight. It is potentially a breach of contract that could give Quantum legal grounds to walk away or renegotiate the entire deal." The realization of what this meant began to dawn on me. My termination, if disclosed properly, could potentially jeopardize the entire $450 million acquisition. No wonder Bradley had not updated the documentation. He was hiding the fact that he had fired someone who was contractually designated as essential to company operations. "So what do I do with this information?" I asked quietly. Jennifer refilled our glasses. That depends on what you want. You have leverage here that no one anticipated. You could potentially ask for your job back with better terms, or a significant settlement, or simply let events unfold and watch the company deal with the consequences. I sat back against my couch mind, racing with possibilities and ethical considerations. Part of me wanted to immediately call Max and reveal Bradley duplicity. Another part wondered if I should just move on with my life and let the company face the consequences of Bradley's actions. A small vindictive voice even whispered that this could be sweet revenge for how I had been treated. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course, Jennifer replied. But do not take too long. Things are moving quickly with the acquisition. After Jennifer left, I poured another glass of wine and opened my laptop. I spent hours researching precedents for breaches of key person clauses during acquisitions. What I found confirmed Jennifer's assessment. Such breaches were considered serious and material, often resulting in delayed closings, renegotiated terms, or even terminated agreements. The next morning, I called Michael Donovan, a lawyer friend who specialized in corporate law. Without naming Meridian specifically, I outlined the situation and asked for his professional opinion. If your name is still on those documents as essential personnel and the acquiring company has not been notified of your termination, that is a serious problem, Michael confirmed. In the worst-case scenario, it could be seen as fraudulent concealment of material information. What would typically happen in a situation like this? I asked. Once discovered, the acquiring company would likely pause the entire process while they reassessed. Best case for your former company, they might renegotiate terms to account for the changed circumstances. Worst case, they could walk away entirely, possibly even seeking damages for the costs incurred in the due diligence process. This information gave me a lot to consider. As I pondered my next steps, Jennifer called again. You will not believe this, she said, her voice tight with anger. Bradley just got promoted to Vice President of Finance, effective upon closing of the acquisition. They are announcing it today, as part of the transition plan. The news felt like a slap in the face. The man who had dismissed my work as just paperwork, who had engineered my firing and called my job redundant, was being rewarded while I struggled to find new employment. That was the moment my decision crystallized. I was not going to let this stand, not just for myself, but for the integrity of the systems I had spent years building. Bradley had fired me to take credit for my work, and now he was about to reap the rewards while potentially endangering the entire acquisition through his deceit. I still had contacts in the Meridian legal department beyond Jennifer. Amanda Harris, the Associate General Counsel, had always respected my work and consulted with me regularly on compliance matters. I decided she would be my first point of contact in addressing this situation. I composed a carefully worded email to Amanda, requesting a confidential meeting regarding potential material omissions in the acquisition insurance covenants. I kept it professional and factual, attaching nothing but suggesting I had information that would be relevant to her role in the acquisition process. Her response came within 20 minutes. Can you meet today at 2 p.m. off-site would be preferable. The wheels were now in motion, and I felt a strange mix of anxiety and vindication. Whatever happened next would either rectify an injustice or create a corporate earthquake, perhaps both. The coffee shop, Amanda suggested, was 15 minutes from Meridian headquarters, a small place frequented more by local residents than business people. I arrived early, selecting a table in the corner that offered privacy from other patrons. Amanda walked in precisely at 2, scanning the room before spotting me. She looked stressed, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting the acquisition process was taking its toll. Thank you for meeting me, I said as she sat down. Your email concerned me, she replied, keeping her voice low. What exactly do you mean by material omissions in the covenants? I took out a copy of the key person insurance document, the same one I had discovered on my desk the day I was terminated. This is the current insurance covenant, included in the acquisition documentation. As you can see, I am listed as the sole key person for risk assessment protocols. Amanda examined the document, her expression growing increasingly troubled. Yes, Your insurance frameworks are specifically cited as material to company valuation. That is standard for the protocols you developed. What is not standard, I continued, is that I was terminated 3 weeks ago, and according to Jennifer Quantum, has not been informed of this material change. Amanda looked up sharply. What, you were terminated? The genuine shock on her face confirmed what I had suspected. The legal team had not been properly consulted about my firing. Bradley eliminated my position 3 weeks ago, calling it redundant. He has since been presenting my work as his own in acquisition meetings. Amanda set the document down, rubbing her temples. This is a serious problem, Erica. The covenant explicitly requires notification of any changes to key person status. If Quantum discovers this omission, they could potentially walk away from the deal I finished for her. Or at minimum delay closing for a new round of due diligence, and possibly renegotiate terms, she added. Why am I just learning about this now? I can only assume Bradley did not want to create complications for the acquisition timeline, I replied carefully, or for his promotion. Promotion, Amanda frowned. To Vice President of Finance upon closing. It was announced today. Amanda closed her eyes briefly, clearly processing the implications. This puts the legal department in an impossible position. We are required to ensure all material information is properly disclosed to Quantum. I understand you are in a difficult situation, I acknowledged. I did not bring this to you to create problems, but because the integrity of the acquisition process matters. These protocols exist for a reason. What are you hoping to achieve by bringing this to my attention? She asked directly. It was a fair question. Primarily, I want the situation addressed properly, according to the legal requirements of the acquisition. Secondarily, I paused, considering my words carefully. I believe my termination was unjustified, and potentially motivated by Bradley's desire to take credit for my work. I would like that addressed as well. Amanda nodded slowly. I need to take this to our general counsel immediately. This cannot wait. I understand, I replied. I am available to discuss this further as needed. We parted ways with Amanda promising to call me later that day. True to her word, my phone rang just after 6 that evening. The general counsel has informed Max about the situation, she said without preamble. There was an emergency meeting with Bradley, who claimed the omission was an oversight that he was planning to address. Was he planning to address it before or after the acquisition closed? I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Exactly the question Max asked, Amanda replied. Bradley is now scrambling to fix this. He wants you to sign a waiver releasing the company from the key person clause. Without any compensation or acknowledgement of the situation, I clarified. That appears to be his expectation, yes. I laughed humorlessly. That seems unlikely to happen. I thought you might say that. Amanda sounded like she might be suppressing a smile. Max has asked to meet with you tomorrow morning. He wants to discuss options directly. After hanging up, I had barely processed this information when my phone rang again. This time it was Bradley's direct number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Erica. His voice was tense, all pretense of friendliness gone. I understand you have been talking to legal about your termination. I have been discussing the key person insurance covenant, yes. Listen carefully, he hissed. You are causing problems with an important corporate transaction for no reason. The oversight in the documentation would have been corrected in due course. After the acquisition closed with you as the new VP of Finance, I asked pointedly. There was a brief silence before he continued, his voice now threatening. You are playing a dangerous game here. If you cause this deal to fall through, you will never work in this industry again. I will personally make sure of it. This threat was so blatant that I actually smiled. Reaching for my laptop, I quickly opened a recording app. Could you repeat that last part, Bradley, about ensuring I never work in the industry again? I want to make sure I understand the threat correctly. Another silence, longer this time. You know what, forget I called. We will address this through proper channels tomorrow. After he hung up, I saved the recording. It might not be legally admissible depending on state laws, but it clearly demonstrated his character and approach to the situation. Minutes later, my email pinged with a calendar invitation for 9 a.m. the following morning. The subject line read simply, "Meeting with Maxwell Richards, CEO, Reinsurance Covenant Matter." I spent the evening preparing for the meeting, reviewing all relevant documents, and considering various scenarios. I decided on a straightforward approach. I would not immediately demand anything specific, but would assess the situation and Mac's recognition of the problem before determining my response. That night, I received a text from Rachel, my former colleague from Client Success. Heard, "You are meeting with Max tomorrow. Bradley is freaking out. Full support whatever you decide. Many of us miss you here." It was a small comfort to know I still had allies at Meridian. As I prepared for bed, I felt strangely calm. After weeks of feeling powerless and discarded, I was finally regaining some agency in this situation. Tomorrow would determine whether Meridian acknowledged their mistake or doubled down on it, and my response would depend entirely on theirs. The Meridian Tech headquarters had always impressed visitors with its modern glass facade and open floor plan. Walking through those doors again after 3 weeks felt surreal, like returning to a place that existed in my memories, but had somehow changed in my absence. The security guard at the front desk did a double take when I approached. "Miss Reynolds, I thought you had left the company." "I have a meeting with Max Richards," I explained, showing him the email on my phone. He made a quick call, then printed a visitor badge for me. "Someone will be down to escort you up." Minutes later, Jennifer appeared, giving me a quick hug before leading me toward the elevators. "How are you feeling?" she asked as we ascended to the executive floor. "Strangely calm," I admitted. "How bad is it up there?" "Nuclear," she replied. After Amanda took this to the general counsel, there was a late-night conference call with Quantum legal team. They are concerned about the breach of disclosure requirements. My stomach tightened slightly. "Is the acquisition at risk?" "Let us just say your leverage is significant," Jennifer answered as the elevator doors opened. The executive floor was unusually active for 9 in the morning, with people hurrying between offices and speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Several former colleagues stopped to stare as Jennifer led me to the conference room at the end of the hall. A few nodded in recognition or offered small smiles of support. The conference room door was open, revealing Max Richards at the head of the table, speaking intently with Amanda and 2 other members of the legal team. Bradley sat to his right, looking like he had not slept all night, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled and tense. Several other executives I recognized were also present, all wearing expressions of concern. Jennifer squeezed my arm reassuringly before I entered. As I stepped into the room, conversations halted and all eyes turned to me. I kept my posture straight, and my expression composed, channeling every bit of professional dignity I could muster. Erica Max stood to greet me, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming in on short notice. Please have a seat." I shook his hand and took the chair directly across from Bradley, meeting his glare with a neutral expression before turning my attention to Max. "I understand there has been a situation regarding your departure from Meridian and its potential impact on our acquisition process." Max began, clearly choosing his words carefully. "Amanda has briefed me on the key person insurance covenant and your role in it." "I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this matter," I replied evenly. "The insurance protocols I developed over my 7 years here were specifically designed to protect Meridian during exactly this type of corporate transaction." Bradley shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I think we are making too much of a clerical oversight," he interjected. "The documentation simply needs updating to reflect departmental changes." Max turned to him with a tight expression. "An oversight that potentially violates our disclosure obligations during a $450 million acquisition is hardly clerical, Bradley. Let us focus on understanding the full situation before characterizing it." Turning back to me, Max continued, "From the legal team assessment, your termination without proper notification to Quantum regarding the key person covenant creates a significant compliance issue. What I would like to understand is why you were terminated in the first place, especially during such a critical period." Before I could respond, Bradley jumped in. As I explained yesterday, it was part of our departmental streamlining. Erica's role had become redundant, as the insurance protocols were already established. Then why, Amanda asked, pointedly, did you present those same protocols to Quantum last week as ongoing specialized work that requires dedicated expertise to maintain? Bradley's face flushed. That was a different context. It seems to me, Max said slowly, that there are significant inconsistencies in how Erica's role has been characterized before and after her termination. I decided it was time to speak up. My position was eliminated 3 weeks ago, with Bradley stating that anyone could handle what he called insurance paperwork. Yet the covenant documents correctly identify that these protocols require specialized knowledge and consistent oversight, particularly during an acquisition. Max studied me thoughtfully. The timing of your termination is troubling, especially given the current situation. But I am more concerned about moving forward constructively. We have a video conference with Quantum legal team scheduled to begin in 15 minutes to address this issue. As if on cue, the large screen at the end of the conference room lit up, and a technician entered to set up the video call. Anxiety rippled through the room, with executives exchanging worried glances. What exactly does Quantum know about the situation? I asked Amanda quietly as the preparations continued. They were informed yesterday that a key person listed in the insurance covenant is no longer with the company, she replied. They requested this urgent call to discuss implications for the acquisition timeline. The screen flickered to life, showing a conference room similar to ours, but filled with Quantum executives and their legal team. Introductions were made, and Max briefly outlined the purpose of the call before turning it over to Quantum lead counsel, a sharp-looking woman named Catherine Wells. We have serious concerns about the disclosure omission regarding key personnel. Catherine began without preamble. Our due diligence process specifically highlighted the insurance protocols developed by Erica Reynolds as material to company valuation. We were not informed of her departure until yesterday, 3 weeks after it occurred. Bradley leaned forward. Miss Wells, if I may, this was simply an administrative oversight during a complex transition period. The protocols Miss Reynolds developed remain fully in place and operational. Catherine's expression did not change. Mr. Thompson, the covenant explicitly requires immediate notification of any changes to key person status. This is not an administrative detail, but a material condition of the acquisition agreement. Max attempted to steer the conversation toward solutions. We understand your concerns, Catherine, and take full responsibility for the oversight. We are exploring options to address the situation appropriately. As the discussion continued, I observed the dynamics around the table. Max was clearly trying to salvage the situation, while Bradley alternated between defensive posturing and attempting to minimize the importance of my role. The tension in the room was palpable. Then came the moment that changed everything. After listening to Bradley explain for the third time why my departure was inconsequential, Catherine Wells cut him off mid-sentence. Given the circumstances, we are officially pausing the $450 million acquisition process, she announced. Our team needs to reassess the impact of this development on company valuation and operational continuity. The room fell silent. Max stared at the screen in disbelief. Catherine continued her tone, leaving no room for argument. We are pausing the deal. You terminated the sole key person listed in the insurance covenant without disclosure. This constitutes a material breach of our preliminary agreement. Max slowly turned to face Bradley, his expression a mixture of shock and fury. Tell me you did not know about this covenant when you terminated Erica, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Bradley swallowed visibly, his earlier confidence evaporating. The paperwork was being updated. It was a temporary oversight that would have been corrected. After the deal closed, Amanda added pointedly, "This is completely unacceptable," Max stated, turning back to the screen. "Catherine, I understand your position and assure you we will address this situation immediately. Can we reconvene tomorrow, after we have implemented appropriate measures?" Catherine nodded. "We are still interested in the acquisition, Maxwell. but we need assurance that all material information has been properly disclosed and that the key components of meridian value remain intact. We will await your proposed solution." After the call ended, the room erupted into urgent conversations. Legal team members huddled together reviewing documents, while other executives approached Max with concerned expressions. Bradley sat alone, staring at his laptop, his career trajectory visibly crumbling before his eyes. Max silenced the room with a raised hand. "I need to speak with Erica privately. Everyone else, please prepare options for addressing this situation by noon today." As the room cleared, Bradley lingered, clearly wanting to be part of the private conversation. Max fixed him with a stern look. "Not you, Bradley. We will discuss your role in this situation separately." Once we were alone, Max gestured to two armchairs in the corner of the room. "Let us talk candidly away from the table." Seated across from him, I maintained my professional demeanor, despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Max studied me for a moment before speaking. "I owe you an apology, Erica. It appears your termination was neither justified nor properly reviewed by senior leadership. I was focused on acquisition details and delegated too much authority without adequate oversight." "I appreciate that acknowledgement," I replied carefully. "Let me be direct," Max continued. "The acquisition is now at risk because of this situation. Your insurance protocols are explicitly valued by Quantum, and your departure without proper disclosure has created a significant problem. I need to know what it would take to resolve this situation constructively." This was the moment of leverage Jennifer had predicted. I considered my response carefully, wanting to be firm but not vindictive. "I built those insurance protocols over 7 years with Meridian best interests in mind," I began. "I would need several things to consider returning. First, reinstatement with appropriate recognition of my expertise and contributions. Second, compensation for the 3 weeks since my unjustified termination. Third, a reporting structure that does not include Bradley, who has demonstrated he does not understand or value my work. And fourth, a clear path for advancement that acknowledges my role in securing this acquisition." Max nodded, taking notes on his phone. "These all seem reasonable given the circumstances. Would you be open to a senior director position reporting directly to me with a department focused on acquisition, compliance, and risk management?" The offer was better than I had expected. "That would address my concerns, yes." "And your department would need to remain intact post-acquisition," Max added. "I will need to negotiate that specifically with Quantum. But given their concern about your departure, I believe they will be receptive." We discussed specifics for another 20 minutes, outlining responsibilities, compensation, and reporting structures. By the time we finished, we had the framework of an agreement that would not only bring me back to Meridian, but place me in a more senior role with greater autonomy. As we wrapped up, Max asked one final question. "Out of curiosity, if we had not discovered this issue with the Covenant, what would you have done?" I considered this thoughtfully. I would have continued my job search and moved on with my life. But once I became aware that my termination potentially violated the acquisition agreement, I felt obligated to ensure proper disclosure, both for legal compliance and for the people who worked hard to make this acquisition possible. Max nodded, seeming to appreciate my honesty. "I will have legal draft the necessary paperwork today. Can you start tomorrow? We have an acquisition to salvage." As I left his office, I passed Bradley in the hallway. He avoided eye contact, his earlier arrogance replaced by the demeanor of someone who knew his professional reputation was in jeopardy. I did not slow down or acknowledge him. Some bridges once burned did not deserve to be rebuilt. Jennifer was waiting for me by the elevators. "Well?" she asked eagerly. I allowed myself a small smile. "I start tomorrow as Senior Director of Acquisition Compliance and Risk Management, reporting directly to Max." Her face lit up. "I knew it. The moment Quantum paused the deal, you held all the cards." As the elevator doors closed behind us, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. What had begun as a professional betrayal had transformed into an opportunity for growth and recognition. Sometimes being redundant simply means someone does not understand your true value. 1 month after my conversation with Max Meridian looked remarkably different, both as a company and as a workplace for me personally. I sat in my new office reviewing the final acquisition documents before the closing scheduled for the following week. My new title, Senior Director of Acquisition Compliance and Risk Management, was emblazoned on the door, and my team had expanded to include 3 additional specialists focused on different aspects of risk assessment. The most satisfying change, of course, was Bradley Thompson's absence from my professional life. Following the disruption to the acquisition process, he had been reassigned to a minor role in facilities management, effectively removing him from all financial operations and acquisition planning. The official explanation was departmental restructuring, the same euphemism that had been used to justify my termination. The irony was not lost on anyone. Jennifer knocked on my open door carrying 2 coffee cups. "Thought you could use this. Legal just sent over the final covenant documents for review." "Perfect timing," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "How are things looking on your end?" "All green lights," she replied, sitting across from me. "Quantum has signed off on all the revised terms. The final acquisition price is $400 million. The $400 million figure represented a $50 million reduction from the original offer, a consequence of the 3-week delay and additional due diligence Quantum had required after discovering the covenant breach. While not catastrophic, it was a significant reminder of how expensive improper management decisions could be. "Max seems to have made peace with the adjusted valuation," Jennifer continued. "He keeps saying it was a costly lesson in proper executive oversight and proper recognition of specialized roles," I added with a smile. The weeks following my return had been intense, but gratifying. I had worked closely with Quantum Risk Assessment Team to rebuild confidence in our protocols and demonstrate the value of the systems I had created. My new role gave me direct access to Max, and the board ensuring my expertise was properly utilized and acknowledged. Rachel from Client Success poked her head into my office. "The integration team needs your sign-off on the transition schedule. Do you have a minute?" "For you always," I replied. Rachel had been one of my strongest supporters during the entire ordeal, even reaching out to offer job referrals when I was terminated. Now, we work together regularly as our departments coordinated client communications about the upcoming ownership change. "People are talking about you, she said as we reviewed the documents. "You are something of a corporate legend now." I doubt that, I laughed. "Seriously," Rachel insisted. "The story of how you returned from being fired to save the acquisition has spread throughout the company. New employees are told not to mess with the insurance lady." I shook my head, amused, but also proud. My expertise was finally recognized and valued, not just by management, but by colleagues across departments. The experience had transformed how I was perceived within the organization. After Rachel left, I took a moment to reflect on the journey of the past 2 months. The day Bradley had escorted me out of the building with my belongings in a cardboard box had felt like the lowest point of my professional life. I had questioned my value, my career choices, and my future. The sense of identity loss had been overwhelming. Now I understood that my professional value had never actually diminished, only my circumstances had temporarily changed. The experience had taught me crucial lessons about corporate dynamics, self-advocacy, and the importance of documenting one's specialized contributions. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my expertise even when others dismissed it. Bradley's fundamental error had been assuming that what he did not understand must therefore be unimportant. That attitude had cost the company $50 million and cost him his career trajectory. My phone buzzed with a message from Max Quantum's CEO, arriving tomorrow for pre-closing dinner. "Please join executive team at 7 p.m. Capitol Grill." This invitation, unthinkable 2 months ago, symbolized my new position within the company hierarchy. I was now part of the inner circle, my voice heard and respected in ways that would have seemed impossible during my years reporting to dismissive managers like Bradley. Jennifer returned later that afternoon as I was finalizing my review of the covenant documents. "Remember when we used to meet for lunch and complain about Bradley not understanding what you did?" she asked, perching on the edge of my desk. "Seems like another lifetime," I replied. "I was thinking about that day you were fired," Jennifer continued. "If Bradley had simply acknowledged your expertise and found a way to work with you rather than feeling threatened by you, the acquisition would have proceeded smoothly. He would still be in line for promotion, and the company would be $50 million richer." I finished for her. All because he could not admit that someone else knew something he did not. We shared a knowing look, both of us recognizing the all-too-common corporate dynamic where insecure managers undermine knowledgeable subordinates rather than leveraging their expertise. The weeks of unemployment had been difficult, but they had also forced me to recognize my own worth outside of company validation. I had emerged from the experience more confident, more assertive, and more aware of the value I brought to any organization. As closing day approached, I found myself in the unique position of being considered essential to both Meridian and Quantum. My role would expand post-acquisition to oversee risk assessment integration across both organizations with a substantial salary increase and equity package. The professional growth opportunities were beyond what I could have achieved in my previous position. Looking back, I realized that Bradley's attempt to make me redundant had actually made me irreplaceable. By trying to erase my contributions, he had inadvertently highlighted their essential nature. Sometimes being underestimated is the greatest opportunity to prove your true value. On the day before closing, I visited my old department, now managed by someone from my new team. The risk assessment protocols I had built were still in place now, with proper recognition of their importance to company operations. Several former teammates greeted me, warmly expressing how glad they were to see me back in a leadership role. As I prepared to leave that evening, Max stopped by my office. "Everything set for tomorrow?" he asked. "All documents reviewed and approved," I confirmed. "We are ready for closing." He nodded, then added, "I want you to know that beyond saving the acquisition, your return has improved our organizational culture. People see that expertise is valued and will be protected even against internal politics." "That might be the most meaningful outcome of this entire situation," I replied. After Max left, I took one final look around my new office before heading home. The framed document on my wall caught my attention, a gift from Jennifer when I returned. It was a copy of the key person insurance covenant with my name, highlighted, mounted alongside my new business card. Below it, she had added a small engraved plate that read, "Never redundant, always essential." The journey from that Friday afternoon dismissal to my current position had been unexpected and challenging, but ultimately transformative. By standing up for my value and expertise, I had not only reclaimed my career, but elevated it to new heights. Sometimes, the path to professional growth includes detours we never anticipated, and the very people who try to minimize us end up magnifying our importance instead. Have you ever been undervalued at work only to have your true worth revealed later? Drop a comment sharing your experience. Did you stand up for yourself like I did, or find another path forward? I would love to hear your stories. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life corporate lessons. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, your expertise matters, even when others cannot see it yet.